Hi, everybody joining. Good to see you live or not live. I'm going to wait just a minute to let folks join. We're going to be talking about, hi, we have our first person. Great. Welcome. Happy Friday. Or I guess whenever you're watching this later on. Jump in the chat. Let's use the chat. Tell me where you're calling in from, how your week's been going, something positive. Good. 10 folks. Hi, everybody. I'm realizing my hair is, a little bit puffy. Happy Friday. Great. Where are you guys calling in from? I'm feeling a little bit funny today because I had almost 9 speaking gigs this week. I spoke to hundreds of women, and guess what? I didn't see any of them because I was just speaking to the camera. So, hi, Kathleen. So it's a little bit odd, right? Because I'm connecting with you all, but not actually feeling the connection. So I'm just so happy to see you. Let's be a little bit vulnerable with each other today, talking about burnout, what that's done to us. I've taught this before, but I've taught it before COVID. I've spoken a little bit about it during COVID too, but man, we definitely need to do this. Hi, Allie Moon. We've got 23 people here, over 400 RSVP'd, which is, I was going to say great, but it also means maybe we're all going through a little bit of burnout. Let's give folks just a minute or so to join again, and then I'm going to get started. So just a quick hello about who I am. So I'm Claire Wasserman, and I am the author and founder of Ladies Get Paid. What is it? It's a book. If you couldn't tell, it's a book. It's an educational platform and a global community that is all about helping women get power financially, professionally. And we had an Equal Pay Day Summit on Wednesday, which was amazing. Shout out to Kathleen, our wonderful producer. It's on the YouTube channel, so I really encourage you to check it out. And if you were there, let me know. All right, so the way that office hours works, and I've been doing it every few weeks or so, you all submit questions beforehand. This is about you. Obviously, I have some thoughts of my own that I would love to start out with, talking about how to approach productivity hacks and then being proactive in preventing burnout, right? Because I think oftentimes we only deal with it when it's too late, in a sense. And then we're really, what we're doing is recovering. I don't want to be in recovery mode. I don't want to be playing defense. I want to really make sure it doesn't happen. So I'm going to start with some suggestions, some frameworks that we can approach this in our life, and then rapid fire, just going through all of these questions that have been submitted before. That doesn't mean you can't ask questions now. I may not get to it just because, oh, thank you, Kathy. I may not get to it just because there's already so many that have been submitted. That being said, you all have something to say. I'm sure you all have, experienced things, have advice, suggestions, etc. So if you see a question and you can answer it, I highly encourage you guys to do that. I just think there's so much power in peer-to-peer sharing. But let's get started. Okay, so preventing burnout. All right, well, there's a couple of things here. There's the structure of your day. So managing, right, day to day, moment to moment. How do you make sure you're protecting your energy? And in the moment, if you need to set a boundary, excellent. There's also, in terms of looking ahead, knowing that we have so much going on, projects that are due, maybe some toxicity in our environments, right? And that's contributing to burnout, because there's also emotional burnout, not just logistical burnout. So I do want to acknowledge it's not always about having a lot to do. Sometimes we're just not in a place where people are treating us in the way that we deserve to be treated. So do keep everything in mind. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer, okay? And I think there's a lot of self-martyrdom that can come from being a woman. It's just hard in general. I also would love to draw your attention to our Equal Pay Day Summit. We had Eve Rodsky speak, and she has a book called Fair Play, and it's all about making sure that your partner, right, if you have a partner, making sure that they're carrying their weight when it comes to childcare, when it comes to taking care of the home. So again, I do want to say, as much as this is about dealing with a lot of work at work, we also need to make sure that we're getting support in a lot of different ways in our life. So wonderful to see you all. Really, really great. And I have something in my eye, so I may be touching it or trying not to touch it. Uh, let's start with the logistical here. Do you have any tips for how to keep your work email organized? Yes. So not everybody can do this, but I actually switched platforms. I'd been using Gmail before. Now I'm actually using a thing called Hey. You guys heard of this? So let me just put it in the chat real quick. I love that we can be interactive like this. Now, again, I know that when you work for somebody else, there's only so much you could do in terms of the email that you use. But if you're able to use this one, definitely encourage it. So the thing that I like about it, and you can absolutely, replicate it if you need to, is there is a file of what has yet to be responded to, okay, in one place. So you don't have to just do this infinite scroll of what's my unread, okay? So it's all in one place. And then you can email, just have it in a whole line. You can put things into folders. Again, Gmail is great for this, but Inbox really sets it up nicely. Something that's very helpful is having a bunch of emails that are just quick responses. I mean, if you can respond to something within like 5 seconds because the answer doesn't require a lot of thought, just go ahead and do it. But also you can put a bunch of, short tasks. So when you have 10 minutes of a break, just bang that stuff out. So you can group it together by urgency, but you can also group it together by how much time that you think it will take. And that's something I also want us to really look ahead to is what's a realistic amount of time that we need to accomplish things? I'm going to speak from personal experience, which is I grossly underestimate how long things will take me. So I'll set myself up for failure in a sense because I give myself a whole bunch of stuff to get done and then I don't accomplish it. But it's really because I didn't think, 2 of these things might actually take me the whole day. So think about that in terms of your email list too, but folders are everything. What are some very tactical things you've done to manage priorities and or time? Okay, so I'm going to give you another little hack here. Todoist.com. Okay, so this, there's different folders for different deliverables or initiatives that you have. You can break things out, right? Because here's the thing. When you say, I have X to get done, you can probably break up X into 5 other parts. So spend a lot of time working backwards from the thing you want to accomplish, right? This big thing, this thing that has a lot of pressure, to all of the steps that you need to take to get there, including if you need anybody else's participation. So who are the people that you might need to ask help for? And that could be, I'm waiting for a graphic designer, right? And their email. So you have all of that. Then be realistic about how much time each of those deliverables is going to take you. Also, you can flag, again, 2-minute tasks on Todoist, right? So when you need to bang things out. Now, Todoist is where I put the gazillion and a half things that I need to get done. But when I look at it, it's obviously very overwhelming, okay? So then what I do is, how many of you all add something to your list even when you've just done it just for the satisfaction of crossing it out? And I used to do this in pen, and then I realized having a Sharpie just gave me so much more satisfaction. I can't be the only one doing this, guys. So jump in the chat. Tell me that you also add things just across the bat. So at the beginning of every day, I take Todoist and I pull the stuff that I desperately need to get done. I call it house on fire stuff. And then I have some nice to haves also, and I put them on a list. And then, this is going to look a little bit messy. Do you notice that there's less stuff here? Then I pull out from my, this is all the things I'd ideally like to accomplish. What are the 3 things? Again, house on fire. And I don't look at the rest because I'm going to get overwhelmed. So I only focus on the thing. And I just added a bunch that were bonus. So I basically have 3 systems here: the catch-all Todoist with a bunch of deliverables, right? And the steps that it takes. Then in the morning, I transfer a few of them over into this sheet. And then I come up with, after that, a really small sheet. And I check in with myself all throughout the day. And I know you're hearing this thinking, well, that's a lot of time to organize. I'm telling you, if you spend more time organizing up front, you're going to spend less time stressing, less time focusing on things that maybe don't need to be focused on. And so depending on all the new stuff that gets thrown my way, I can immediately think, does this go into Todoist? Does this go into maybe my nice to haves? Or is this actually a house on fire? And if that's the case, I take a moment and I look at everything and I decide something's got to go. Something has to be moved down. So knowing what place it goes into is excellent. And then I redo it at the end of the day. I reflect on what's been done. And I let myself to actually be friggin' proud of myself if I got the house on fire stuff done. I go to sleep, sleeping like a baby, because I know that I accomplished what actually really did need to be accomplished. Okay. And then in the morning, I start fresh with that whole system. So really figure out what works best for you and that it's adjustable. Okay. How do you identify burnout before it's too late? So let me tell you, in my book, and I think I'm going to mispronounce the name, the Mayo Clinic, guys. This is where I looked up where they had a list of all of the ways that you need to be identifying. So even things like, have you become cynical or critical at work? Do you drag yourself to work and have trouble getting started? Have you become irritable or impatient with coworkers, customers, or clients? Do you lack the energy to be consistently productive? Do you find it hard to concentrate? Do you lack satisfaction from your achievements? Do you feel disillusioned about your job? Are you using food, drugs, or alcohol to feel better or to simply not feel? Last, have your sleep habits changed? Are you troubled by unexplained headaches, stomach, or bowel problems, or other physical complaints? I would say I actually have a fair amount of these. These are the symptoms of burnout, okay, from Mayo Clinic, which means we are all teetering on the edge of it constantly. We need to be doing check-ins with ourselves. And it's okay. It's, if it's hard to concentrate, I get it. You got a million things going on. So just being, Mayo, thank you. Appreciate that, Anne. So be aware of it before it happens, meaning maybe throughout the day. Again, 3 check-in points, perhaps when you're going through your to-do list. Am I feeling any of this? And let me, and I'll get back to answering questions in just a minute, but I want to share something with you that was a game changer for me. I really thought about, when does my energy start to be depleted during a given day? 3.5, 4 hours of work is when my brain starts to just go to mush. I've realized that about myself. So I plan ahead. Instead of trying to power through it or being mad at myself, why can't I concentrate? I go, I'm going to put something on my calendar for 5, 10, 15 minutes every 3.5, 4 hours that I have to do. Now you're thinking right now, well, Claire, I don't want to have to keep doing stuff. No, doing could be just being, sitting there, but it's an activity that you've scheduled. And I think when we do that, we're much more likely to commit to it. You can also put it on your calendar so other people see it. Of course, they don't have to see that you're taking a 10-minute nap, but something where you really block it out. Maybe you even put up an away message. I am such a fan of that, where you say, hey, listen, I'm for 4 hours. I'm heads down getting work done. If this is urgent, I'll be checking my email at X, Y, and Z times. Email me again with the subject line urgent, right? So part of it is not feeling guilty, like you're not working or letting somebody down, by simply setting the expectations up front. So if you need to do that. I also think we need to be scheduling breaks in between meetings. And I know it's hard when you work for somebody else and they're pulling you in a bunch of directions, but be upfront about it. Say, I try to schedule 10-minute breaks, 15-minute breaks between each meeting so I can be as present and productive as possible. Get ahead of this stuff too. Don't just talk about it when you need it. Like, we're all in the same boat of boundaries being bleeding, right? Because we're working from home. We're working all the time. So I would say, have a proactive conversation with your manager and ask them how they're doing. Ask them, what have they learned in terms of protecting boundaries, especially during this time? So you don't feel like you have to be the one to speak up about your own burnout or boundaries. This is humanizing them too. So seek advice from them. And that is the beginning of a conversation of, how do we basically put in place guardrails to ensure that we are doing and being our best, which means you have to have some semblance of boundaries, which can look different for different people. So really reflect on that. Also, think about, in terms of, and I'm just going to read a section of my book just because it's just really important here. So where are you spending a lot of your energy? Also, what time during the day do you do your best work and your most present? Look at all of your to-dos, and I would really group those to-dos into categories of energy also, right? What requires you to do a lot of creative thinking? I do that in the morning. What requires you to do a lot of tedious stuff, spreadsheets, etc.? My brain goes to mush at 4:30, right? So that's when I'm going to schedule it. Okay. So think in terms of your workload, categories of energy, knowing in the day when and how you're feeling. And then also note, when you're feeling particularly anxious or agitated, I mean, really for the next 2 weeks, write down every time, because that's a place where you need to focus and you can deal with them one-on-one, right? So if I'm particularly anxious around my inbox, then we can see that that's something specifically we need to deal with. If I'm, you can come up with that, right? But instead of just looking at this thing as this massive burnout problem, there are specific situations and people that are causing it. So when you break it down, it will feel less overwhelming because you can deal with these things. Also, by the way, with the inbox stuff, create an email ritual. You're only checking it really twice a day. It's when you drink wine at night, if you can make the environment sort of fun for yourself in any way. Don't be afraid to delete something once it's done, just so you have the satisfaction of seeing a clean inbox. Let me just tell you one more thing before I jump into more of the questions that were submitted. Make a list of the things that do give you energy. And some of it might be exercise related, movement related, right? And some of it might be stillness. So for example, taking a walk, reducing screen time, exercising, right? Here are some of the things. Then be realistic about a commitment, right? So take a walk. All right, once a day at 4 p.m., I will commit to doing that. Reducing screen time. Okay, don't look at my phone past 8 p.m., right? Leave it in another room. Exercise. Okay, do a 20-minute home workout twice per week. I'm being realistic. Schedule this stuff. Because again, I think we often say to ourselves, Claire, go exercise, reduce your screen time, but you're not scheduling it. Okay, so please do that. All right, let's get back to these questions. What are best ways to communicate that you need to, that you have boundaries issues here? And how do I do it without looking bad, right? Or that I'm letting people down? All right, well, what are the different ways that your boundaries are being encroached on? So let's think about, your boss keeps piling on new stuff. I want you to have a place where you've written down all the priorities, and you just simply ask them, this sounds great. You show them all the deliverables and priorities. Where on this list do you think this would fall? I mean, you can make your own suggestion. Because you can't do everything all at once and do the same amount of amazing work. It's just, everybody knows this, right? And be upfront about it. I want to do the best job that I possibly can, but I do want to confirm with you about priorities and expectations, okay? And come with suggestions. If your colleague asks you to do something, help them with something, you could say, thanks for thinking of me. Unfortunately, I do have a lot on my plate right now. I don't want to let you down. I also am not sure I'm the best person for it. Come back to me when there's another time that I can help out. Or can I think about, is there somebody else, that we can talk to? If a lot of people have been coming to you recently and you really want to talk to your boss about it, you can say, a lot of people have been approaching me to help with X. In theory, I'd love to help, but in reality, I don't have much time given the other things I'm working on. I wanted to flag it for you in case there are additional resources or support they can get, or maybe there's someone else I should be directing them to. So basically what I'm telling you right now is it's a suggestion of not just no, but is there something else, right? So it's no and, right? It's no, here's why, and here's a possible solution. Something to remember about this is when you set boundaries, you're demonstrating to everybody else that it's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say, listen, my hours, I do my best work at this time, or I'm, really dealing with my kids at this time. I will get back to you, right? So again, you're setting the expectations with the boundaries. So you don't feel like you're just dropping off the face of the earth. Let's see. Do you find it harder to set boundaries while working from home? How do you do that? I'm curious how you all feel. I've actually been, I just want to be upfront. I don't have children. So I think the way, the kind of burnout that I'm dealing with is nothing. It's nothing compared to those of you who have kids. So I don't have a ton of advice for how to best work with your children and your family. Other than, again, maybe even in the morning, it's group meeting. Here's what I have going on. Here are times during the day where I cannot be disturbed. Here are times during the day where I am totally available for you. So it's again, it's not just like going off into a hole and not being there, nor is it being completely available. And then ask people, what do you think? What does your day look like? What do boundaries look like for you? It's letting people know, listen, I might be emailing you at 10 p.m. at night, but there's no expectation for you to respond to me then. So again, it's doing a service for you, but it's also really allowing other people to feel like, this is okay. How do you deal with, somebody asked, how do you deal with people who don't respect your boundaries after you've already made them clear? I'm wondering that also. I always invite people to have conversations about this where it's, hey, out of curiosity, like we did have this conversation before about where my focus is. Again, I don't want to like let you down in any way. I'm curious, like, what are your priorities? Like, are you struggling with any burnout also? That's the first step I would take. So it's not this, listen, you're doing something I've asked you not to, bye. Sometimes you do need to do that, but I'm wondering if the first step is to really ask them about their own workload and sort of why are they still trying to pull you into things. And maybe you discover they really need an assistant, right? And somebody did ask about how do you make the case for more resources? I just want to know what's really going on, if that's possible for them. And then it's just reiterating that we all have to do our best work and this is the way it is. And how, can you support them in a different way? If that's, I'm an HR coordinator and have expressed my struggles at home, but still have been given more tasks and I have reduced my hours to 32 hours, 4 days since 2021. I cannot be set up to fail. Right. And I'm assuming you maybe had contextualized your conversation with, I don't want to be set up for failure. And again, it always goes back to, I want to give 100% of my attention. By the way, multitasking doesn't exist. If you look up the definition, it's actually just switching very quickly between tasks. So you can also point to research that you've done, right? Here's some reading that I've done. If you feel like you need to kind of back yourself up, if it's not really being respected by just saying, well, here's what I want and why. It's like, there's some research behind this. If you do need more resources and somebody to support you, you really have to put this through the filter of how does this affect the company and how is this going to contribute to the company's bottom line? It's also thinking about if you were in their position, what would make you say yes? And by the way, being proactive in all of the reasons they may say no, it's probably going to have to do with budget. You also want to have kind of a backup ask. Listen, if this person can't come on, full-time or even part-time, what are a few hours that they can do? And here's specifically what they'd be helping with. And measures of success, like here's how we can see if it's working or not. And again, always going back to, I just think that this deserves the full amount of attention that, we all want it to. Here's my entirety of what I'm working on and where I'm prioritizing. And then you say, if you were in my position, what would you do? And even, have you been in this situation in your job here and previous jobs? Like, I've said this a few times here. I think you can tell that I'm just such a proponent of making it more of a peer-to-peer conversation where you're demonstrating, where you ask them questions. Also, I'm sure that, you've had to juggle a lot of stuff here. That's a way for you guys to be more of like a peer-to-peer conversation rather than feeling like, it's a test or like the power dynamic is so scary. Because they've been here too. How do you, How do you refine your motivation after burnout? I mean, if you've given yourself some time to recover, which by the way, doesn't always mean you need to take a week off. Like if you were scheduling what I call pockets of pause, even things like on Wednesdays, I start to feel burnt out. So I do kind of a half day on Wednesday, but then I do half days on Sundays where I work. Right. So I've recognized that's the best way for me to organize. Again, I know that's not necessarily the case for everybody, depending on where you work and what you can do. So I don't, my motivation, it's not so hard to get back on the horse because again, I've been so proactive with where I need to take breaks. If you do need to find, you're really struggling with the motivation, I would say focus on the why. Why are you doing this work? What's the purpose of it? What are you learning about yourself? Here's also something interesting, and I am very curious if you've all experienced this. I often do a lot of my best work when I'm tired. And I think I've realized why. I don't have enough energy to overthink things. I don't have enough energy to be a perfectionist. I've really seen that in a lot of my speaking and teaching. When I'm a bit, on autopilot, I mean, I muster up, energy, of course, but it just gets smoothed out when I'm kind of just like in the zone and not my energy isn't all over the place, right? Does anybody experience that when you drink too much coffee, right? You can actually get less done. So I am curious if when you're a bit exhausted, it's okay not to be too motivated as long as you know that you're getting the priorities done. Like good enough is good enough. And sometimes this overworking comes from imposter syndrome, right? Thinking we're maybe not good enough to be there, or it's perfectionism, right? So there's also just letting go, good enough. And somebody did ask about the phrase letting the ball drop, because there was a book, Tiffany Dufu wrote a book about it. And I think I haven't read the book, but I think that's what she means. Good enough is good enough. Even though I know that sometimes we're in environments where we feel like we have to go above and beyond, right? Especially I think for women of color, I've heard this expression of I have to work twice as hard to get half as much. So I do always want to acknowledge that this is not necessarily the same for everybody, but good enough is also still good enough. Somebody the other day said to me that she aims for the A minus. She aims for the A minus, and that's okay. That's okay. I love my work, but I'm still sleepy. How do we differentiate between work burnout and just life pandemic burnout? And keep hoping that one can be fixed. I think we should all assume that we're experiencing some level of trauma. Okay. And so with that, I mean, there's a heaviness. I remember around January, it really, and this summer, we had the pandemic, we had, a racial reckoning, we had an insurrection. So that's where I accepted my burnout a little bit. And I didn't have this expectation that I needed to be at 100%. Or I needed to be happy all the time. And when I kind of accepted that, it became easier. Now I wasn't spending extra energy sort of fighting myself. Get back on the horse, right? Why aren't you feeling happier? So I don't know if that's really an answer other than just assume that that's always going to be in your subconscious, what's going on. And just project ahead and think about how proud you are when you look back of how you survived. Like we're all doing amazing jobs, just like showing up every day. So maybe lower the kind of going back to like lower the expectations for yourself. And at the end of the day, I mean, really look at, is there something that I've done that was good enough, that I was at, a house on fire and I put out the fire? Gratitude is really good, right? Gratitude journals. I also think doing something nice for another person, which honestly could be emailing them and saying, I think you're doing a great job, or I know you have kids and that must be hard. Like, shout out to you. Like, let me know how I can support you. Or going to somebody's manager and saying, Alexis is kicking butt. That's going to give you energy, and it's small, right? And that's part of like gratitude for other people and gratitude for yourself, right? Just for showing up. What are your self-care rituals that you found to be effective? Naps. I'm a big proponent of naps. So I've actually done quite well in this pandemic because after this, I'll go lie down for 10 minutes. Naps, I find putting my face in the sun, that's self-care for me. Watching reality TV is self-care. So I think, let's get away from it has to be expensive or it has to take a lot of time, or even have to purchase something. So I would say really, what's something small, realistic, and consistent that I can do. And again, that can be doing something lovely for another person. And by the way, the 5-minute journal is great. I know there are other gratitude journals, but if you all want to look that up, that's a nice place. That's how I started getting into a gratitude practice, was through something called the Gratitude Journal. Natasha has a great question. What are some tips you have for evaluating the priority of personal tasks with work tasks? By the end of my workday, I'm usually mentally exhausted and I can't focus on my own life tasks. So there is an excellent book out there called Can't Even by Anne Helen Peterson. So let me, Can't Even book. Let me just post that into the little chat for a second. This came from a BuzzFeed article that Anne Helen Peterson wrote a few years ago that went absolutely viral. It's about why millennials particularly are burnt out, but why we can't ever seem to accomplish little life tasks. For me, it's going to the friggin' post office. Like there's some stuff I can just never bring myself to do. First, stop beating yourself up, because now you're adding that extra energy of beating yourself up already to an exhaustion, right? And things you have to do. So first recognize, all right, this is something a lot of people struggle with. Put it on your list of priorities, right? Again, if you really sort of can put it off, put it off. If there's a way you can reward yourself for doing it, I mean, I don't want to say we're like dogs, where we're like training ourselves, but I think we'll probably be more likely to accomplish something if we get a little reward, which oftentimes is just feeling like, I have a sense of accomplishment, okay, just by doing this. So I'm not quite sure there's even really an answer for that other than release the judgment of it. Know that if it's not like a massive priority, it's okay to drop it. And then building in some kind of reward. Also, I wonder if there's accountability we can give to ourselves, where a number of us say, hey, listen, I have X, Y, and Z tasks that I really don't want to be doing, but let's all commit, like as if we're all going to the gym. On Saturday, I have to clean my house and I've been putting it off. Who else has something that they need to accomplish on Saturday, right? Accountability for personal stuff. So let's find each other. And by the way, ladiesgetpaid.com, we've got a Slack group. That is a fabulous place to meet people. I actually thought the question was going to be a little bit different when I glanced at it. So I'm going to answer the question I thought it was, which is, how do I know kind of the urgency of a task and how to best prioritize? I'm going to tell you about something called the Eisenhower matrix. Has anybody heard of this? Eisenhower matrix. So this was how he determined during whatever war that he was fighting, of how do you decide where this falls, today, right? And I can't find it in my book right now, but it's 4 Ds. Okay. So it's, what do we have? So do it, delegate it, defer it, or delete it. Yes, Christina knows what I'm talking about. Okay. So I'm going to say it again. Do I do it? Do I delegate it? Maybe do I need to defer it? Or perhaps I can just delete it. And this is where the question of good enough comes in. Maybe every time that you're looking at your to-do list, right? Really make a Post-it note, put it there and filter through. This is why I'm saying we need to spend a lot of time up front in the morning and in the evening and maybe in the middle of the day of reevaluating where in this matrix does this task lie? And also, how much energy is it going to take? Is it grouped in with categories of like-minded, right, or similar tasks? So our brain isn't going back and forth between creative thinking and maybe like tedious spreadsheet type thinking. And, delegating, that's hard for those of us who are perfectionists. So again, sometimes people come in and ask about, I just can't delegate, or I'm procrastinating, and they want to focus on what to do about those two things. And they don't realize that a way to actually tackle it is to go through, is perfectionism holding me back? And do I not trust myself to let this go? If you do delegate it, and really that should be the number one question you ask yourself before you take anything on, is there someone else who can be part of this? Set expectations with them. This set expectations and goals and priorities. Maybe have them, shadow you as you do it the first time. Acknowledge that it's not going to be done the way you want it to be done. You're really a teacher here. And I always think, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself, or it'll take more time to explain it than it will for me to do it. That's correct in the moment. That is not correct for long-term sustainability. So this is about the long game. All of it, your life, your career, every choice you make is, yes, I need to figure this out today, but really working backwards from, is this sustainable? And if the answer is no, you have to just let it go. Okay? Embrace your chronotype. Okay, TJ, night owl or early bird, and consider structuring your day. Yeah, and work around them. Also focus on sleep, one of the big factors in preventing burnout and improving productivity. Yes, so I would say, yeah, good sleep habits for you all. Everybody has something different. I mean, I think it's pretty universal that we shouldn't be looking at our screens right before we go to bed because there's a blue light. Man, that is so hard to do. So maybe get a book and read the book before you go to sleep. Maybe something quite boring also. And if you do wake up in the middle of the night and you can't fall asleep, get out of bed because tossing and turning is just going to make it worse. So go to the couch, sit there, drink some tea. CBD gummies are great. I just, man, I forget now what it's called, but I just purchased something. Sleepy Bear. I don't know if you all have something. Yes, let me just put this in the chat right now because I found them to be the best that I've tried so far. I think it might have some melatonin. I would take any kind of sleep aid, take it at least an hour before you actually want to go to sleep. Otherwise, you will wake up groggy. Also, when you wake up in the morning, drink a ton of water. Also, something, let me just, 1 second, let me show this to you. Okay, this has been a game changer also. I mean, it's ridiculous looking. It's one of those massive, like how many of you guys are drinking water like this? And it has different times of day, okay? So we got 7 a.m., good morning, 9 a.m., 11 a.m., right? And it has all these sort of funny things of keep going. When I started doing this, my fatigue really decreased. It was pretty wild to see lack of hydration was affecting me in a lot of ways that I didn't even know. So this is really great. I also, I do well when it's kind of like, rewards here of like 9 a.m., and that sort of, this is kind of accountability right here. So that can be huge. We're at time. I feel like I didn't get to enough. And I talked also quite quickly, and there was a lot to cover, but just to sort of recap here, we talked about inboxes, right? How to, kind of be strategic about your email, how to prioritize effectively, how do you set some boundaries, understanding, warning signs of burnout and checking in with yourself. That is a huge water, but I know. I don't remember where it's from. I just Googled and I looked on Amazon and I thought this was really pretty. Plus it matched my nails. So you'll see a bunch of different water there. And I do this and then I transfer some of it into here throughout the day. And what's also really nice is my bathroom's right over there. So when I have to pee constantly, which I do, I just walk in there. So it's hard when you have to travel a lot with that sort of thing. So take advantage of the fact that we're at home and we can do more self-care, like lying down for 10 minutes, like drinking a lot of water. So maybe let's think about, the benefits of not being in an office too. And I know that means a lot of us are working more, but that can also mean you can take more pauses too, which I have found good. Motivational water bottle on Amazon. Yeah. I love you all so very much. Thanks for being here for 30 minutes. I know it's, again, not enough time to really dig into much of this stuff, but hopefully you found a few nuggets of helpfulness and inspiration. Know that you're not the only one going through this. And if you really can look at progress that you've made, right? A time, where you've really burnt out before and maybe now you're more aware. And that's progress. You're more aware of the warning signs. Maybe now when you get burnt out, you don't beat yourself up over it like maybe we used to, right? So that's progress. Maybe, when you go to sleep at night, you think about the 3 priorities you accomplished that you needed to, and you just let everything else go. That's great. I also, I'm going to be probably shouldn't be so honest about this stuff, but I live in California where marijuana is legal. And I found a huge lifestyle shift for me in taking advantage of, some alternative plant type products. That's not right for everybody, obviously. But part of it was just, I'm number one. Like I've learned to care. This is going to sound really weird, guys, to care less about stuff. Maybe that's the theme of what's happened today here and me talking about it. It's sort of like A-, good enough. I care deeply about the work that I do. I care deeply about you all. And my, and everything that I do. I'm a really sensitive person. I'm a really intense person. And so I recognized for me, I just need to let stuff go. Like, I love you all, but like 5:30 today, I'm going to just stop caring. It's like, and I say to myself, I just don't care. Again, I'm being very honest. I mean, again, I love you all and I do care about you, but when it's me time, it's friggin' me time. Okay. I have a different attitude to say my baby. I've actually heard that from a lot of women who have kids where they just let things go. And not everything is so important, even if our boss pressures us and makes us think that stuff is urgent. It's just, you are just number one. I can't say that enough. Like you really have to put yourself first. And that's not taking from others. Also, one other thing that's a bit woo-woo that I'm going to tell you about, and some of you may have heard this from me before, is I do a visualization. in the morning. And I really did this a lot when I used to live in New York and taking the subway every day. I would imagine gold molten lava coming all down over me. Okay. And I know it sounds woo woo, but hear me out. Coming all down over me, and I'm coating myself in it. Okay. When I am completely covered in this like gold paint. Okay. What this did for me was it was a shield. It was protection from the chaos. Anything that happens during the day, most of it, you don't have control over. And I think for a lot of us, we want to have control. And so we're spending extra energy trying to control this shit. And so what I would say is, I am number one. I am first. My identity, energy, self-worth needs to be protected from the chaos of all the directions that I'm going to be pulled in and all the things that will go wrong. But the reason I picked sort of gold shimmer paint is because I didn't want to imagine myself wearing like Teflon. Like maybe that'll work for you, but I still want to deeply connect with people. I still want to care. Okay. But it can't be at the expense of myself. So somehow that visualization, it really worked. And when during the day, when I feel like my energy is being pulled, I stop and I say, do I need to coat a little bit more paint? Like, am I missing a little bit? Do I need to coat? I also had an acupuncturist once tell me she wraps herself in a bubble. Things like that help. Do you visualize this when meditating? Oh, I'm so glad that you brought that up, Justine, about meditating. For those of us who maybe have been a little hesitant to meditate, that's because we're thinking about it as like a big commitment and that you have to be, silent with yourself and, the monkey brain going all over the place. We need to focus it. That, of course, is meditating. But to me, meditating is just being present. So I have found ways where I can achieve that. You know what I do in the morning? So I make a little espresso and I go sit by the window where there's sun and I smell the coffee and I hold the mug. Okay. And I do a sensory 5, 6 senses. I can't remember where it's, what does this smell like? What does it look like? What does it taste like? What do I hear outside? What do I feel? So I'm checking in with my senses. I'm not thinking about all the shit I have to get done during the day. This is me time. That has worked better for me as a kind of setting, being ready for the day than it does maybe being quiet with my eyes shut. So figure out what meditation looks like for you, what being present looks like for you. Anytime that you are starting to feel chaos, go back to the senses, right? What are all the things I hear, smell, feel, touch, okay? Box breathing is great, okay? 5, imagine going 5 across, holding your breath for 5, out for 5, right? Do it like that. 4, breathe in for 4, hold for 8, breathe out for 7. Make sure it's coming from your belly, not from here. Okay. So that to me is meditating again, because you are being present and you're being in touch with your body. So find out what that makes. And sometimes it's just saying, I love you to yourself over and over again and in the mirror. Okay. That's huge. That's huge. But I do really encourage you, if you are feeling like maybe imposter syndrome and perfectionism is taking a lot from you, therapy is excellent also. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate all of you being here. Happy Friday. I miss you desperately today. I wish we were in person, but that would also take a lot of energy. By the way, a big way that I've done this is I went across the country a few years ago and I hosted town halls in 19 different cities for women to come and talk about work and self-worth. And my energy was just pulled in a million directions. Yes, the travel, but also hearing people's stories and being in a room of 150 women and being the MC and right, sort of being like an energy shifter. And I would go home and just start crying. And I recognized a few things. I recognized that crying was excising a lot of stuff. That was good. Okay. So I just let it out. And then over time, I realized I could be myself, but also have this boundary where I'm like, okay, I'm here with you, but I'm also protecting myself. And stating that to myself actually went a really long way. And at a conference, at our conference 2 years ago, a woman in the audience came up to me after, and she's an energy healer, and she said, I saw what you did. I said, what do you mean you saw what I did? She goes, I just saw all throughout the day, you were recalibrating your energy, where you were there with us, you were present, you were giving a lot of energy, but I could tell there was still a guard that you would put up, and only she could tell. And I was so moved because I had done a lot of work on it. So maybe that's going to look different for a lot of people. I know you asked me questions about logistics, and hopefully I gave that earlier today in terms of like hacks for rebel and for time management, etc. But some of this is just stating what you want. to yourself, and the awareness actually goes a long way. And don't be afraid to set boundaries. Brene Brown has quotes about this, that setting boundaries is compassion for you, and it's also compassion for the other person, because you're not going to let them down. You're not going to let them down. Thank you all. It's 46 minutes. Look at me. Next steps, ladiesgetpaid.com. If you haven't joined the Slack group, my book is ladiesgetpaid.com/book. I have a whole chapter in here about sort of orienting yourself for the long game, sustainability, and stick around on our YouTube channel. We've got a lot more videos here. Keep me posted. Follow me on Instagram, Claire Gets Paid. I do respond to DMs, and good. I'm glad this was helpful. I'm a bit burnt out myself today, so it's meta, and that's okay. We all get burnt out. Just make sure that you've protected your self-esteem throughout all of this. Love you all.